All right, give me just a second and we're gonna get started here. I'm just figuring out some stuff that got broken in the background, but well, I guess we'll have to do that at the end of the stream. Right, switch on over. Hello, everybody. Good to see you all. Hope you're all doing well. I also still need to find a way to nicely transition between the intro music and the music that we have going on here, because that is also like triggering me. Hope you're all doing well. I don't think Lily is still here, but good luck at the gym, Lily. Color coded insignia saying hello, hello, hello. Good to see you. And hello, Sheila. Good to see you too. I saw you chilling in the voice chat like half an hour ago. I wanted to jump in, but then by the time that I was ready, I didn't see you in there, so we missed each other. No. Who knows? Maybe we'll jump in over the weekend or something. Shitty Podcast is saying, hey, I think it's my review today. Yeah, we had a couple of issues with the queue as well that I was noticing. So it's one of those days where like literally everything is breaking. So yeah, apologies for that. We'll get those issues fixed like as soon as possible. Today we have Hugo Parussini and Brice SABINE-MANIer. Brice SABINE-MANIer, I think. Paris, France, so give it a French spin. Yeah, so we're gonna talk about those two people today. And then hopefully we can get everything submitted in the end, but we'll see. I also noticed that a lot of people submitted like some beautiful context, you know? But yeah. Yeah, that didn't make it into the final thing, so I had to fix that as well. So now we actually know what people what people want to do in the end. But yeah, we're gonna dive into 2 portfolio reviews today, which is gonna be good. And then afterwards, I have like a bunch of things to fix still. So yeah, we'll get into that as well. Shitty Podcast saying, "Ah, rip, that's not me." I think you might be next week, Shitty Podcast. So 1 more week. Sorry for the queue being all jumbled up. I know that that's not ideal. And I think what I might do is I kind of want to add a sort of an indication of like, oh, we think, or like there is an indication of like when we think your work is going to be reviewed, because I think that's also going to be helpful. There's honestly a lot of stuff that could be very much improved when it comes to the messaging of the portfolio reviews, when they happen, who's going to be featured in them, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, there's a bunch. I have a list of stuff to do. And the list is long. That's basically what the issue is. Yeah, I'm aware of a bunch of stuff, but it's just working my way through the list. Talking about that list, the priorities currently are focusing on 2 kind of lessons / articles that I'm setting up for creating portfolio breakdowns and creating portfolio presentations, which I'm working on, have been working on over the past couple of, let's say, week, I think. And I think we're getting to a spot where they're almost near completion. There's only one thing that I need to figure out, and it's how we're gonna get them to you, because the way that I set up the website kind of has some restrictions and limitations here and there. So I'll need to figure that out, how we're gonna do that. But I can show it off. And like I mentioned in the stream on Wednesday, what I want to do is I want to take all that information and turn it into like a nice condensed like YouTube video anyway, so that it's there and it's all just condensed and it becomes like one nice thing. And then if you want to dive deeper into it, then you can go to the website. Give me just a sec and I'll throw it on screen so that we can have a quick peek at it as well. I just need to get the latest version online. There we go. And then this one as well. Cool, that's done. Right. So let's have a quick look. So just to give you a peek of what I've been working on, this is what it is currently looking like. So let me scroll all the way up. And this is the lesson on portfolio presentation. So it basically goes over, like I was mentioning on Wednesday as well, the purpose of portfolio, general presentation advice, your design for your portfolio, so how to present yourself and your portfolio, how to do good thumbnails, and how to present artwork, right? And all the variations between. So there's a bunch of tips in here on like, general presentation advice, what to do. But yeah, most of this is basically just condensing all the information that we've been talking about for weeks and months and years up until this point from all the portfolio reviews. I try to just condense that into like one nice lesson. So you can kind of see, first we're going to be talking about portfolio design, then thumbnail design. So how do you stand out in like the sea of like ArtStation thumbnails, right? Or how can you think about like standing out a bit better? And then also I want to give some like practical advice too, because a lot of it is going to feel very, very top level, wishy-washy kind of stuff, right? But I also want to say like, hey, look, here's an example. So we have the original image up top, then the crop, like how do you make a good thumbnail? And then just all the iterations of, adding a simple vignette, adding some color contrast, adding a sharpening filter, adding some personalization effects and all that kind of stuff. Same thing is going to happen for the artwork design as well. So you can kind of see the way that I always structure your portfolio post, right? So the artwork, what's this called? Starting with beauty shots, then detail shots, what you've done, how you've done it, and then your progression, right? Progression is kind of optional, but the first four are always a good indication of just like, okay, this is what I need to have, right? But yeah, and I got some examples on how to do like presentation for these shots as well. So here's like two examples, one that is more designed, right? So it's more purposeful towards like what the environment is. And then one is more like generic with like a simpler font and like a banner and all that kind of stuff. But again, once this is all finalized, we will then start putting this all into place and hopefully get that out to everyone. And then we also have one about like breakdowns as well. So again, showed this off on Wednesday. Have not done too much on this, but yeah, this would be just examples on how to create a breakdown, what needs to be in a breakdown. How do you show off like different things? It's all going to be that kind of stuff. But yeah, just wanted to show it off. Busy working on this as well as organizing a lot of content that's coming to Academy as well. So we have a bunch of lessons that are in the works currently. So yeah, we are currently talking. We're currently talking to a bunch of industry professionals, trying to get them on board to have them write lessons for us. So that's also what we're doing at the same time. But yeah, wanted to give like a quick overview, and then I'll probably turn that into like a presentation. Here are some of the slides that I'm working on, like really quickly to give you like a sneak peek behind the curtain. Kind of talking about like this is specifically our thumbnails, like how do you make like interesting thumbnails and what are the different options that you can add in thumbnails. But more on that in the final results that will hopefully be making its way to all of you later. Let's switch on back for a second before we dive into some portfolio reviews in a second. Hello, Justin. Good to see you. Good to see you. But yeah, so we've been working hard. We're also going to be doing a fun. We're also going to be doing like a fun little test run, I guess, from like a co-working session. So next week, Wednesday, I'll make a proper announcement about this, like probably over the weekend. But we're going to do a co-working session where we're just going to focus. So no talking, only typing if you want to. And then we're going to be sitting down together and kind of doing a test run of this. It's going to be fun. Stefan is saying, when is this releasing, or is this on the site? When it is releasing, it kind of depends on when it's done, right? So I feel like I'm getting to the final stages of it. The only thing that I might need to think about is maybe making a general lesson that talks about like what your portfolio is, but I'm not sure about that. But the idea is that it will be releasing on the website. Hopefully, this is the thing that I need to figure out. it is definitely going to be a part of a specific track on Academy. But for this stuff, I also want to make that available to everyone who is a member of our community too. So it will not be locked behind. It will not specifically be locked behind like the Academy stuff. So yeah, but I need to figure out like how we're gonna do that from like a back end perspective, because there are some things that I need to figure out for that. So TBD, hopefully next week. That would be the hope. So it gives me some time to put like all the finishing touches in. Gives me some time to focus on like where we're gonna put it on the website and how we're gonna do the formatting and how we're gonna give people access to it over the weekend. And then, yeah, that should give me enough time to kind of figure all that stuff out. But yeah, what else has been happening? God, it's almost bad news like every week now, right? I think the other thing that was happening is just like still like a lot of stuff coming out from like Microsoft and like a bunch of like YouTube videos and news articles and all that kind of stuff being written about it. It's kind of crazy. I was watching a video from I can't remember the channel, but they were talking about like specifically id Tech being affected, right? And they were speculating, speculating, I don't know if that's the right word to use in this context, but they kind of did some quick maths where last year there was 180 people working or something like that at id Tech. And then it seems from the reporting out there like 140 people got let go from that studio, like in the recent cuts, which basically means that its software now seems to be a studio of 50 people, which is fucking mental for a studio that publishes like successful titles, right? And has like a bunch of, revolutionary tech. Like if you look at like the engine itself, that engine, how smooth it is and how optimized it is, like that is crazy. So yeah, I was listening to like a video talking about like how that studio specifically got affected, and it is just mind boggling. I don't want to keep talking about it for too long, because again, it is just like sad news after sad news, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, it is just crazy that it just keeps happening. The light looking awfully cinematic. Let's go. That's also because it's freaking warm outside, so I want nothing to do with the sun. But yeah. But yeah, it's also a good thing. Like I've been trying to keep a bit more out of the news, honestly, because it's always just the last couple of years have been like pretty horrendous, for the games industry. Um yeah. There is actually one thing. Okay, spinning it around to something more positive. I have not done this yet myself, but there is apparently like a video going around from like No Law, like a game that I'm keeping my eye on, and they kind of did like more of a deep dive into it. I have not watched this yet. So has anyone seen that yet? Because I'm curious what is happening. Do, 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 do. See, getting some messaging in. Hello, my pal. Good to see you. Good to see you. But yeah, that's a game that I'm keeping my eye on. That is like very very interesting. Keeping my eye on the game, but I haven't watched any vids lately. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I haven't watched anything recently about them either. But yeah, that seems like a game that I'm very much interested in. I was also watching some gameplay from another game called Hunger, which is interesting. Not the type of game that I would necessarily play, but I do like the premise of it, right? Um, it's it is gonna be like a PvPvE kind of extraction kind of shooter, right? But it's kind of set. It gives me a lot of like Hunt Showdown kind of vibes, like the way that how gritty the world is, and the kind of style that they're going for. So that was also like pretty interesting to kind of watch some like clips about and just to get familiar with like what people are playing out there because yeah, usually very much in my own bubble. So yeah, that was an interesting one. And then obviously, this is something that I want to check out myself. I want to buy like the early access for like Fatekeeper and kind of walk around in that game because that game looks juicy graphically. So I do want to try that. Justin is saying, honestly, I thought Ill was just some tech demo with their initial vids, but after the trailer release, I'm super excited. Yeah, God, Ill is that falls heavily into the realm of games that I'm like so disgusted by that I don't even want to touch that with like a 10-foot pole, right? I guess that is what they're going for, but yeah, it's there is something about like the viscerality and like high definition realism that we have now when it comes to like these horror games that is just like no, I don't need that in my life, you know. And I used to be like a big horror fan. um Dead Space was probably like one of my favorite horror games of all time, you know, just the way that that was set up, and that was really visceral as well. But I think now with graphical fidelity being yeah, I mean hyper realistic or whatever you want to call it, right? Like I don't know, man. I don't know. There's something about it where I as always, I appreciate the craftsmanship and the attention to detail, but it goes to a point where me as a gamer, I'm like, ooh, I don't need that gore in my life, you know? Thank you. But it is cool to see though. It is cool to see. Yeah. Yeah, what else? What else? It's kind of just been like a week of just like me knuckling down and just like being heads down, like writing a bunch of stuff, organizing a bunch of things behind the scene. So I haven't really been absorbing a lot of information, you know? Yeah. Hello, Arvid. How you doing? What I am personally excited about is going back to Gamescom though. I feel like this is the calm before the storm for me personally, where it seems that a lot of things are kind of like slowing down in terms of like my exposure to games, and I'm like readying myself for Gamescom to be yeah, to be like fully immersed in whatever Gamescom has to offer, and I'm really looking forward to it. Really looking forward to it. We're getting things together as well for our meetup, so that's exciting. Um, we made like a first post on LinkedIn as well, kind of announcing that we're gonna be back for 2026, which is really nice. So yeah, we're if you are interested and if you are in the area, feel free to check out Games Artist Meetup. I'll send a link as well. Feel free to check that out on LinkedIn because we will be posting more updates on that soon when tickets become available and all that stuff. So yeah, keep an eye on it. Hope I can attend the BE meetup one day. Sounds like a great time. Yeah, yeah. This is an interesting one, right? Because the game artist meetup is something that I co-organize with Leah Kronenberger, Jasmine Habazai Fekri, and then my partner Tiffany. So it is really nice to just like get together, organize a meeting, and then it is just like all of us coming together with like people from across the entire spectrum, skill wise, like you know, experience wise, and all that kind of stuff. And it was really interesting. I think this is something that you only hear after the fact. I would hope that a lot of like connections got made and that we hopefully put people together that were looking for a job, and then hopefully people that were able to maybe or looking for people to have a job. um in Antwerp? No, this is gonna be at Gamescom, so in Cologne. That's where we're doing the meetup. Um, I mean the location is pretty much confirmed. It's gonna be the same location as last year. So it's in Quarter One, which is like close to city center. You can actually find like more information if you go to the link that I just sent you. We have a website. All the information is gonna be on there. And we will announce like the date soon. Well, we will add the date to the website and the LinkedIn page soon, but it will be the 26th of August. So it's going to be Wednesday of Gamescom, which is quite nice. to transition into what's going to be a busy Gamescom this year. But yeah, it was nice. It was really nice, and I hope that this year is going to be even more successful as last year. I mean, everything looks like it's going to be really successful, and that hopefully we have a bunch of people that make like really good connections during the whole event, because yeah, that's what it's all about. And I'm honestly looking forward to meet like a bunch of new people. I want to meet more people, and hopefully also like, yeah, people from the community. That was nice last year. Met a lot of people for the first time, so I think that would be cool to have more of that happening too. But also, if you, I mean, talking about Gamescom, if you are going to Gamescom, feel free to connect with me. Like, feel free to send me a message if you're going on a certain day. Let me know, and then we can meet up, because I would love to meet up with new people. It's gonna be busy, so we'll have to schedule a time. But I'm sure that I can carve out some time to meet up with people. That sounds fun. You guys saying, man, I'm still debating. I mean, you're also going to develop too, right? I think I've never been to develop, but from what I hear, well, oh, here's the thing, right? Like, if it was like, let's say in the beginning of the year and you were still debating, I would say Gamescom. But at this point, it is probably going to be so expensive. It is probably going to be so expensive. So at this point, I think you have to be really lucky, or it might just be too late. I think, because it's it's honestly not even Gamescom itself. Gamescom itself is like really affordable, I feel. Depending on which ticket you're interested in, right? Um, but it's just the price to stay in Cologne. And then you can, my recommendation would be to look for accommodation like in Düsseldorf or in Bonn, which is like in the same region, and you can travel for free. So there are options still, but yeah, if you want to stay like quite close to the convention center, it's going to be pretty freaking expensive. I think prohibitively so for a lot of people, which is unfortunate. Yeah. But yeah, we would love to do so. When DinCon opening was happening, right? So DinCon is I think it's a month-long event organized by the Dynasty Empire, with Jeremy at the head. And me and Jeremy have been talking like on and off for years now about stuff, like very occasionally. And he brought up the idea that it would be nice to do like a collaborative meetup sometime, like kind of bringing Beyond Extend and then also Dynasty Empire and maybe Experience Points like all together. Because yeah, we kind of have connections there between all of us. I think that would also be really fun. That would be really fun. So yeah, we will see. We will see what's happening with that. But yeah, well, that would be nice, because the Game Artist Meetup is more something that is like external to Beyond Extent, right? Like, we kind of sponsor and help organize the event, with like me taking ownership of like the tickets and stationery and the website and stuff. But yeah. But yeah, so that's something that we'll need to organize between Beyond Extent and the other communities. I think that would be really fun. In the end, I just want to go one day and just for the industry part. I don't know how camping is, but I think it's sold out already. Would be funny. Well, me and Lily were actually looking at camping, and camping sounds like horrendous. Like, the idea of camping, I've been to a lot of festivals. Um, I've been to a lot of festivals before, and I liked it when I was, oh my god, I'm gonna sound so old. When I was younger, and didn't care so much about like having good night's sleep and all that kind of stuff. I would not want to do camping at Gamescom. I need to be fresh and bright, and I need to put my best foot forward to basically talk to a bunch of people the entire day. Um, so yeah, camping is not for me. But I think there are still places available though for the camping. Have you seen a new free tool of Andrew Averkin? He released it this morning. It's nice for Unreal. Oh yeah, it's Composition Maker, right? Or what was it called? Like Composition Maker. It looks cool. It looks cool. It's actually Yeah, it's just like a quicker way of just setting up, like, adding physics to objects and then running the game and then pressing Control K and then it saves like the positioning and all that kind of stuff. Um, yeah, I'll tell you this: it is a nice tool, right? And it is awesome that it's free, because it is literally just like a quick way to speed up something that was already free before, right? But it is awesome that people are just putting stuff out for free there. I think that's a nice way. Now I just want to bind it to like a key, just like a hotkey where I can just like press like, I don't know, a hotkey and then it just like does the whole thing for me. Like just start simulating, press another hotkey, done. But it looks nice though. It looks nice. Du-du-du-du. The guy saying, "Oh, that sounds fun. Speaking of, there's a Dutch Game Week starting as a spin-off from Playground Festival. They don't mind, I think, looking out for people who are interested in collaborating, etc." Yeah, I think Lily posted me about it. Well, I have not followed up on this at all. Is that this week? Is that this week, like Dutch Game Week? I camped once, never again. Caught in in a thunderstorm with heavy rain and high winds. Oh yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I was pretty lucky when I went camping, all the times that I've been. But even if the weather's like really nice, um it's just I sound like such an old man. It's so uncomfortable. Plus also I'm really tall. So, you get like a pop-up tent that suits like two people. To give you a frame of reference, in that pop-up tent, the cheap ones that you can get from Decathlon or like your general sports goods store or whatever. I have to almost lie in it like diagonally because otherwise I wouldn't fit, because then my head is scratching against like the top and my feet are scratching against the bottom. So yeah, tall people problems. Tall people problems. But yeah, no, I think for Gamescom especially, if you're just going as like a game consumer, right? Like if you just go in there for like the commercial area, I think camping could be fun, because you're just like trying to connect with random people. But oh my god, I need my sleep because every day I am knackered. I am knackered. I'm dead at the end of the day. I think we walk like on average like 30 to 35,000 steps a day, and then talking to people the entire day as well and running from like meeting to meeting, and it's chaos. It's nice chaos though. I do like it. Probably because of the heat too. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It's around November and October. So November 14th until the 22nd in Breda. Yeah. Okay. I'll need to check it out. But I don't know what they're looking for though. Because here's the thing, like I'm very, very picky, right? Well, I'll say it the other way around. I'm very comfortable at home. So when there is an event like this, it has to be I don't even know what I've been looking for. It has to be convincing enough for me to, spend the time, spend the money, and all that kind of stuff to even go there. And like I said before, I'm so comfortable at home. I like just sitting at my PC, doing beyond extent things, like writing stuff up and all that. It's gonna be hard to pull me away from my PC. But hey, I'm always open to. Like, I don't know what they're looking for. Are they looking for anything? Like, I think so. Here's the thing. I think it could be fun to do something around, let's say, portfolio reviews, but then do them live. I think that would be fun, or maybe be part of a panel or something like that. I think that sounds like pretty fun to me. But yeah, they have 2 years down and they're still figuring it out, but I tried to give some feedback coming from GDC. That could be possible to fix there. Yeah. That is the one thing where I would actually want to have a car because I don't have a driver's license, right? Breda is literally like a 45, well, a half an hour drive away. It's not even that far. But if you want to go by train, you have to go to Antwerp first, which is literally the opposite direction, and then have to take the train to Breda. So it takes me like an hour and a half, you know. But yeah, I'll look into it. Thank you for suggesting it. Because there were some other like interesting events happening in the Netherlands as well. I think playgrounds. I was really debating going to playgrounds. But then it would already have to be like an overnight stay, you know, just because of travel times and stuff. I'm like, okay, is it then worth it again? I'm comfortable behind my PC. Yeah. There's a couple more things on like the horror games as well, right? Like going back to it, a couple people were adding their comments there. Resident Evil is enough for me. I can't get enough of those. Ill, however, seems to be fetishizing the gore for its own sake. Oh, and hello. Enjoying a short break outside from the heat. What a strong intro. Yeah, it is true. Like I like I like the horror where like the gruesome stuff is in line with the storytelling, right? And I feel like ill because I think also if you look at like the work from the artist that's like driving ill, you know, like where it came from, that was like it was just like a lot of gory, like yeah, intense stuff, right? So it makes sense that like the game would honestly follow in those footsteps. But yeah, yeah, no, again, not for me. No thanks. I like the ones where you know it's more subtle, no jump scares, maybe a little bit less gore, but it plays more on the mind. I think that's more what I'm a fan of. You know. Um, plus also yeah, I think that's true. Like I think you got a good point there, Arvid. I think it isn't scary. It is just vile, right? It is just off-putting. It's just off-putting in a way that is just like it's disgusting, right? It's disgusting. Um, but I do love the ones where it's like it's tricks of the brain and you know the more subtleties. It doesn't have to be. For example, I'll give you a reference. Like one of my favorite horror movies of all time is probably going to be the Blair Witch Project. You know, and you never even see what happens. You know, I mean, it's an old movie. At the end, you know, you kind of see what happens, but you never see you know like if there's a creature behind it or oh my god there's like a ghost witch floating about and it's like no it's all just like up to your imagination and I think that's what I love about games like that. That being said though, that is really difficult to kind of make a good game about, right? Because at a certain point people are going to have that expectation of like hey, you've been giving me all these hints and you've been fucking with my head so much. Like, okay, give me something concrete to look at, you know, or engage with in like game mechanics form. Um, I think what was a good example of this? Dear Esther, right? Is that the game? It was like one of the earliest walking simulators, but it was for people that weren't really paying attention. You didn't even notice like what was going on really, but it had a couple of moments where it is very subtly hinting at like a thing watching you from a distance or something like that, right? And I think that is way more scary to me than like a creature chasing me, you know? Like if a creature chases me, it's almost like, oh, it could be like a boulder from Indiana Jones and we're just running away from that, you know? Like to me there's almost no difference to me. Um yeah. I will say though, like I'm not a Resident Evil fan, right? Well, I'll say that I've only played like the old Resident Evils, but the latest one looks really good though. And that is again like more like monster based, right? But I think it's because they did such a fantastic job of making the monsters like feel real that yeah, they do a good job with that. This is why Obsession is so trending. The timing of the jump scares, the jump scares is so off. Yeah, I'm so out of the loop with any movies. But I've heard people talking about Obsession. Yeah, but is it Alina? Is that in like a good way that the timing is off, or is it bad? Are people just making fun of it basically? Because I don't know. I have, like I said, like I'm not in tune with like the movie at all, so I don't even have a clue what it's about. Scary games is all about timing. Yeah, I think also like there are some like really good games. Like, oh, for example, Fear was a good game. You know, that kind of like fuck with your head as well. I think that's a great example of like psychological horror. Yeah, I think that's a good example. Yeah. Fair enough then. Half an hour away by car is not that bad. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I watch good video essays about horror. I can't handle it, but still can appreciate the way that how to do it. Yeah, that's the same thing that I feel with games, right? Like I so as a gamer, right? From like my personal interest in like what games that I want to play, I care nothing about GTA 6, right? GTA 6 is gonna pass me by, and I'm not gonna even be the wiser, right? But I do appreciate like the craftsmanship and the way that they've built like this evolving thing over time, and all the beauty that goes into like creating, like the visual benchmark for the next generation of games, right? Like that's what people look at is that, right? Like, and it became such a monolith in the gaming industry, and that's the thing. I think it's always good to have a separation between, like the craftsmanship, and then also, the, I guess, the consumer aspect of it, if we say it like that. Those are like two very different things. Really good. It's very psychological horror. Even innocent scenes are creepy. Ooh, okay. Maybe if we have like a movie night, I'll suggest that to my partner. We used to watch a lot of horror movies together, so I used to watch good video essays about horror. Yeah, yeah, I do like watching people break down like obscure like horror movies, right? Or like things that you wouldn't necessarily find or something like that. I think we talked about this like a couple of weeks ago. There are like a lot of these like YouTube channels that are kind of set up as um they're kind of set up as like, oh, hey, I'm just like in rural America, and in the middle of the night I go explore like abandoned places. But some of them are set up to kind of add like little subtle, like, I don't know, like bits of horror into it, you know? It's already spooky because we're in the middle of fucking nowhere in like the night, right? But then what I love about it is that most of the videos are just literally them exploring, right? But then sometimes if you rotate things back, you then see like a person looking at them from outside the window or something like that. But in the moment, you don't notice it because it's very subtle. I think that's the stuff that I love, where even now I'm getting like goosebumps from that, because it's a fact that it has been there for the entire time, but you didn't notice it until you then watch it back, and it's like, oh shit, it is there. I think that's also what I quite like about it too. But yeah, there's some good obscure movies. Yeah, I guess I guess there's this weird correlation, whenever the big people get involved, like AAA in games or Hollywood in movies, it kind of sucks a little bit of the soul out of it. Mm, I don't know. That kind of sounds like very very cynical, but yeah. I don't know. I kind of have that feeling. Because for example, one movie that I really liked was, let me think. I might be confused about the original title, but it was Rec, I think. REC, which is like a Spanish horror movie. So like the whole thing is in Spanish. It's basically they have an apartment block. Someone goes in to do like a report on what is happening within the apartment block, but nothing really bad is happening. It's just like I can't remember the what the original squabble was for. But it's basically they go in for like a journalistic interview, and then all of a sudden, like something happens in the house, and the whole house just gets shut down and quarantined off because they know that something bad is going on. But they they can't go outside, right? Because they're now a part of the quarantine. And it's like this, yeah, handheld footage, and like something is happening in the house, but you don't know what, and like it slowly evolves over time, and you see glimpses of it, and it's really good. And then you watch like the Quarantine, which is like the Hollywood version of it, and I think it's just I don't know what it is, but it's different. It's not as good as the original, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't know what that is. I think honestly, to me, what makes a huge difference is that I cannot recognize the people, and sometimes it is quite nice that I can't understand the language because it makes it feel more real. It makes it feel more real to me. Because as soon as I see I don't know, Chris Pratt in a movie, then I'm immediately done with like immersion. Like I don't know how that works for other people, but if I see a famous face, I'm like, nah, okay. Like it's the movie's already over basically. Because now I'm thinking about like freaking Jurassic Park the whole time, Like I don't know. There are movies where like an actor can overcome that, right? But I feel like that's so difficult. I would rather see like I don't know, smaller movies, I guess, with like unknown actors that can surprise me in that way. Anyway, I'm just ranting here. So that's what you come here for, like Timothy's movie reviews. Gemini Home Entertainment is a good one. Oh yeah, I've watched that. Yeah. Well, so that's one of the things where I watched a person watching it and kind of breaking it down, right? And that's more the stuff that I'm into these days, I feel. Rec mentions, let's go. Yeah. Yes. All right. We're not going to be talking about movies the whole time, though. Let me switch up to some portfolio reviews, right? Mm. Shutter is a great horror. Yeah. That is a great horror. I liked it. Yeah, there's some great horrors out there, man. Some really great ones. Anyway, let's switch it over. So we are gonna switch over to some portfolio reviews. Let me switch on the music as well. Um, what is that, Tika? National Flesh Pit Park is also a good one. Okay, thanks for the horrific recommendations. Like even the name sounds horrendous. Appreciate it though. Well, maybe I'll check it out. Um, on to portfolio reviews. So, for people that don't know and are a community member, you can sign up to get your portfolio reviewed. If you just go to your little tab here, you have your perks, portfolio reviews. You can just add your portfolio review if you wanted to. Just give me like a bit of information here, and then you'll be added to the queue at the bottom here. There's also like a bunch of things that would be helpful to check out before. So I generally look at this from four different perspectives, right? So hireability is like how you align yourself with the industry. Presentation is the presentation of your portfolio. If you do a good job of like presenting yourself, your artistic skills and your technical skills, hopefully those two like kind of speak for themselves, right? There's a couple more things in here, but yeah, just to give you an idea. For the first person today, we are talking about Hugo Parussini, second year student at Bellecour École from Lyon in France. So the goal for Hugo is to take a lead in world building, create stories by making environments. Okay. Okay. I mean, pretty generic here, right? What I recommend as a goal is to have something that kind of has like an end in sight attached to it, right? Sure, like I mean, I keep talking about like my goal, I guess, is to get better at like making big and more immersive environments, right? So I guess I'm not setting a great example here. But what can be helpful for me, especially if we're doing portfolio reviews, is to kind of let me know, like, hey, this is this is the role that I'm aiming for. I would love to work at these companies, and these are the sort of things that I love to do, right? Maybe I'll refine the question as well. Um, but yeah, so let's start with Hugo. We are gonna have a look at your description first. So I'm Hugo, a second year student at Belcourt École. I specialize myself in 3D environments, but I learn all kinds of field in 3D at Belcourt École if needed. Okay. Um, I'm not a native English speaker myself, right? But it would always be good, and this is I mean, it might be controversial depending on how you view AI, but this might be a good one where you can tell AI to do at least spell checking or like not spell checking, but also consistency in language, right? Let me also give you a view of what's happening here, right? So let me move that here. Because yeah, it's always helpful to already give people an idea that you take care of the way that you present yourself up until the smallest details, which include your description, right? I know it sounds dumb, but I can guarantee that there's going to be a whole bunch of people who are going to be like, well, we are like an English first studio, and then we're already getting a look into like how you construct sentences. It sounds dumb, but I don't know. Like you have to be careful with this stuff. Not that I personally trip up about this, right? But just to be safe when it comes to this stuff. But you're saying second year student, I specialize myself in 3D environments, which is good. I would honestly say, I would honestly say you can almost cut out the first sentence and just say like, hey, I'm Hugo. This is why I love games. I want to be a 3D environment artist myself, and something like that, right? Don't try to attach it to something that can change in the next couple of years, if that makes sense. Because that means that every year you're updating your CV and your portfolio and all that kind of stuff. Make it a little bit more future proof, I would say. So make it a bit more generic, or not generic. I think that's the wrong word. Make it more applicable to a longer time scope, and also give us a little bit of a personal reflection, right? Like, why did you go into games? Like, what inspired you to go into like 3D environments? Because the way that I always look at this description is a good moment to kind of give us a little bit more about yourself, because your CV is a thing that is just like your super professional, kind of boring kind of thing that you just hand to people and you just say like, hey, look, this is what I'm good at, this is where I'm coming from, like blah 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 blah, right? Let's have a look. You got your Instagram and your LinkedIn added here. Da, da, da. That's all good. Portfolio and a demo reel as well. I'm just gonna say this. It's not bad that you have it on your portfolio, right? Or like on your LinkedIn. I don't think that's bad at all. I will say that for game art, you don't need to have a demo reel. Demo reels are completely optional. They seem to be more catering towards VFX, right? But I'm curious, so let's have a look. Also, I would say be careful with what's happening here. Oh, it's still loading. Hmm. I was also going to say be careful with adding your phone number on here. The reason why I wouldn't add your phone number is because you're basically getting invited to have like a bunch of spam calls, right? And also, I have never let me not say never. I think I have gotten one or two calls in my entire career, right? Um I think it's always better to just have like an email. I I don't see the value of having a phone number on there, honestly. Um, yeah, and the two calls that I got were from recruiters, not from actual in studio recruiters, but just like recruitment agencies that are just. I think they were just trying to gather as many um yeah, as many applicants as possible, you know? So keep that in mind. I would probably avoid a number. Is this like an issue on my end? Like, why is this not playing? Is it because I got like things blocked? Let's have a look. There we go. Just mute this. CV harvesters, yeah, but then I mean, you need a CV anyway, right? But if you can avoid having like your phone number on there, I think that's good. Or what you could do is grab like like a kind of secondary phone number, like a throwaway one. Maybe that would be helpful. Because then at a certain point you can be like, hey, look, I got a job, but this thing is going in the bin now. Demo reel. I mean, it is nice. It is optional, right? Yeah, that looks okay. I don't really give a lot of comments on demo reels anyway because they are so optional, right? So I don't think that it's the best time to spend there. Let's see. Pretty standard portfolio or like LinkedIn profile here, which it's okay. I think most of the traffic is probably going to come from your art station anyway. I would say definitely keep up your LinkedIn. Instagram, fully optional. Like I don't think I don't think like Instagram has real value for finding your way to your portfolio. Unless you're doing a lot of social media stuff, right? Like if you are like posting shorts and I don't know, like all that kind of stuff to grab like extra attention, that would be cool. If you're not, you might as well remove it, honestly. Make it simpler. Cool. Let's have a look. What's on the about page? Pretty much very similar. We don't have a blog or anything. Okay. First of all, first impressions, pretty good. I like the consistency between the thumbnails. You're consistently thinking about like consistent design elements, which is quite nice. I do like that a lot. Um, which is quite nice. It kind of gives like a good overarching feel to your portfolio. It feels really consistent, which is cool. Let's start with the older work then. I wanted to create an environment in which I made all the props myself. Um, the first thing, the first thing that I thought here was, is this based on a tutorial? I don't know where the tutorial comes from, but there is like a very, very famous like gas station tutorial, right? If that is made from a tutorial, make sure that we know that it's coming from tutorial. Because if I find out that it's like really similar to a tutorial and I have to look for it myself, I'm not going to hire you. The reason for that is it's not that using a tutorial is bad, right? But it's you lying about using a tutorial and not mentioning it, right? Um, Obviously the distinction here is that if you use the tutorial to learn about like one little element of the thing and you make the rest of it yourself, that's fine. If you use the tutorial from beginning to end and then you don't mention it, that's where things go off the rails, right? Again, totally fine. I'm even fine with you posting a tutorial on your portfolio. Totally fine with that. But make sure that it is tagged or signaled as that, right? That you can give a shout out to the actual artist that made the tutorial and have a link to it so that we know where this is coming from, right? The same can be applied to fan art. It is all about maintaining trust, right? If you lie about, I don't know, having like an EA logo for like any game that you can think of, let's say Battlefield, right, for example, and then I go into it and it's like, wait, this isn't Battlefield, like you just used the logo. That's lying. And I know that that is a serious offense when it comes to claiming ownership of something that you haven't made yourself, right? Same thing can apply here, and that's very important to us in the artistic industry, right? That out of the way though, so some things to keep in mind there. I think the presentation is really well done. You're already going to know what I'm going to say probably at this point. I want to see wireframes. I want to see UVs. I want to see textures. I want to see all that good stuff. Right now, we're only seeing pretty pictures and you're not showing us any game art, right? So that's already like minus points. I think what I'm seeing here like looks like nicely textured and stuff, right? So yeah, from what I can tell from that, it looks quite nice. But I don't know if it is like 3 million polys and it's using like 16 textures and it is game appropriate, right? I need to know. Um, yeah, I need to know how you've built it, right? That is the most important thing in game art. Especially if you're trying to get in, you need to be able to showcase that you've done stuff in the proper way, right? Cool, cool, cool. Let's have a look. But overall, the presentation is quite nice. It's also nicely consistent with your thumbnail design, which is quite cool as well. I love to see that. So yeah, I think you're doing some pretty interesting stuff when it comes to the presentation of your portfolio. You're already thinking from a broad perspective, which is quite nice. Let's continue on and let's see if that continues. Let's have a look. Reference image. Video game tour. Okay, interesting. Misspelling in the reference image there. That's funny because what would be the translation? Stoer is like a word in Dutch, and it means I guess what is the meaning? Like proud or like standing tall? You know, proud. I don't know. Probably has like a macho connotation to it as well. Yeah, that's interesting. So let's see. We've got a couple of breakdowns here. I think this is quite nice. In terms of like showing like all the stuff you've done. But watch out for clipping, right? Like whenever you add like graphical elements, give it a little bit more space. And yeah, also watch out for the borders, right? Like we're getting pretty close to the borders, here. So watch your presentation there. Isn't it more like you're a daring person? Probably. It kind of has that like weird like mix between like, you know, like proud, macho, daring kind of angle to it, which is yeah, pretty interesting. So world line textures, this is cool. Like this little breakdown where you show off like, hey, this is how I made the material. This is how you can go about adjusting it. This stuff is nice. Um, until you break the normals over here. Fun little thing here. It's okay to do a little bit of editing, right? Like whenever you're trying to showcase anything for your portfolio, do a little bit of editing, right? Because basically now what you've shown, right? And this is very nitpicky. But if you showcase something like this, and I'm going through it and it breaks, then I know that you didn't put in like proper guardrails to stop that from breaking, right? So you've basically made a material that can be broken by like someone else, which is not a good indication on how you think about like making materials or tools that can be used by other people, right? In a production cycle, that's important. Anyway, small thing there. Watching the meshes. Yeah. Again, no breakdowns, right? I'm not going to go into that again. But I think that's going to be like a pretty consistent theme, right? Again, here, presentation is quite okay. You're doing like 3-point lighting, which is quite nice. We get like a rim light that's kind of showing everything off quite nicely. And it looks okay. But again, I have no clue on how or like how dense the topology is, like what the textures look like as separate things, you know? It's all on the visuals, and that's not what we want to see in game art. We need to be able to see how you've built something, right? Always keep that in mind. That's why we're gonna skip through it like relatively quick. I'm actually curious. So we're gonna do a time warp, and I'm gonna skip to this one. Let's say. Okay, we'll talk about that in just a second. I'm curious if we can. We got breakdowns. Nice. Okay. Well, we've got wireframes. I wouldn't call it a full breakdown, but we got a wireframe. I'm already happy with that. That's really good to see. Now I just want to see, texture breakdowns and all that kind of stuff. You're doing a good job with like showing off the wireframe. I would also say pick a color that is contrasted with the environment, right? You have an environment currently that is dominated by like warm colors, and then you introducing uh, a yellow wireframe to the whole thing kind of makes it like really hard to read in certain places, right? So pick something like a cyan or like a blue or something like that. But okay, we got wireframes coming in. I also don't know how many polygons we're looking at, right? You show me a wireframe, but I don't know how many polys we're looking at, or polys or triangles, whatever. Whatever you want to do there, add that to your presentation. Nice. Okay. Seeing some wireframes again, which is cool. This so I'll give you an indication of why wireframes are important, because it gives us a fundamental understanding of your decision making through the whole project. What I mean by that is let's say we look at this wireframe, and if I grab my pen, we're gonna be looking at it. Is that you are basically telling us with your wireframe, like, hey, the ground, super important, right? Oh my god, I need to add so much detail into that. But then the framing of like the door itself is like, well, that can be kind of basic, you know. It does follow the stone shapes a bit, so we need to keep that into account too, Tim. Don't get distracted by only the wireframe. But you can see, right? Like even in certain sections where it would be nice to probably have like a little bit more topology to kind of give the silhouette like a little bit more of a unique shape, right? So it can really showcase your priorities in terms of like where you decided to add your topology, right? In this case, you would probably want to have less on the floor, or maybe you have like dense areas here, right? Because that's where you want to have interaction with your asset, right? The rest of it can be like really low poly. So yeah, that is why it's interesting that we can have a look at your topology, right? A thing that I also immediately do is whenever I look at someone's wireframe, I try to zoom in to the darkest areas. So the darkest areas, as in where a lot of lines are coming together, and if they are semi-justified, right? So what we can see here is that the lamp has a lot of bevels and a lot of geometry for something that is like relatively similar. And again, from like a density perspective, right? You decide to only give like a couple of edges here, but then this lamp has comparatively like a lot of geometry compared to something that is like bigger and potentially even more important, especially if you talk about like silhouette here, for example, to add a bit more geometry too. So yeah, hopefully that gives you some insights as to what we look at when it comes to topology. Da-da-da-da. But I'm already pretty happy that this is a showcase. We're missing poly count again, right? So keep that in mind as well. Um, Let me see. Stefan is saying also the bevels seem a bit heavy for gameplay. I think that's in reference to this, right? Yeah, I think again, wherever like you see a lot of density on like the edges, sure. This is also giving me an indication or a sneaky suspicion, by the way. If we talk about like bevels, right? If you add a lot of bevels here, I am gonna assume that you don't know how to bake, because if you're baking this down, you would not need those bevels, right? So without you showcasing your textures, I'm going to have to assume that this is only like sort of mid poly, and then you just textured it without having to bake, right? Because even if you did bake, then I'm asking a question like, okay, but why did you add so much geometry then? Like we can cut a lot of that stuff out, right? So yeah, think about what that says to people, right? And again, like it's really easy for me to be convinced otherwise, right? If you say like, hey, here's my textures, and I can see baked information on the textures, I'm like, okay, so you know how to bake, that's awesome. Now we just need to optimize the prop a little bit more, and the consequences of your actions, let's say, your presentation, are less dire because of it. Because let's say if you only show the wireframe, I have to lean on a lot of assumptions. If you break down everything, I can then be very clear in like, okay, this person knows how to bake, knows how to do proper textures, they know how to fill a UV space. Awesome. So the only issue here is optimization, and optimization is really easy to fix, right? It will just mean cutting out like a bunch of bevels. That's totally fine. That is way less of a risk for hiring you to my company compared to, hey, I don't know if this person can bake, right? Can you see why showing game art is so important now? It's giving you, well, it's giving a company that wants to hire you a clear indication of your skill set and what you can do. And that is very relevant to what we do in the games industry, right? Have a look here. Low poly, high poly, that is good. Same things. I'm curious, are these like, okay, so these are like separate variations of doors. Interesting. That's an interesting choice. You just wanted to make like other doors? Not that they look bad. I like the look of them. Yeah. What I will say though is if you're doing a sculpting pass, try to be more bold with your silhouette, right? Like try to break up your silhouettes more. Yeah. Because right now it still feels that we're looking at, you can kind of see it here. It kind of still feels like we're just looking at like a cube that kind of has like a Boolean shape out of it, but it feels very basic. Whenever you're doing a sculpting pass, really go ham on the silhouette and try to reflect that silhouette in your low poly as well. Because for example, let me see if we can find a couple of examples of this. Yeah, it feels like your low poly, your high poly is restricted by your low poly, right? And this happens a lot, right? Because the way that we think about our workflow in the beginning, especially as students, is that I create a low poly. That low poly is going to be my final version, so I can't really change the silhouette. And then you take that into ZBrush, and then you're going to sculpt a very, very surface level detail because you don't want to destroy your low poly. It's always better to kind of see your low poly as like a base mesh, then sculpt the best possible thing that you can sculpt, and then make a new low poly, right? It sounds annoying, but I would even get to the point where like this, I don't UV unwrap at all. Don't care about it. I just do this work, take it into high poly immediately, and then go back to low poly by like decimating my geometry or maybe doing like manual retopology, depending if you want to showcase this. And then UV that, right? It is the UVing is going to be a little bit more tedious, but I can promise you your asset is going to look like 1,000 times better because you're not restricted by your low poly. Cool. Let's see. We skipped over a couple of things here. So let me go back into this one. Oh, it's my friend RGB masking. Okay, so here's an interesting thing. So if you use RGB masks, show me the resolution that you went for and how many RGB masks that we're talking about, right? Because right now, I learned a lot about like the RGB workflow, which allowed me to achieve more detailed and flexible surfacing, blah, blah, blah. that's all good, right? Like, I love that you're exploring like new workflows, and I think the final result looks quite nice. You can kind of see a lot of like service variation, which is quite nice. I do like that part of it. This way to showcase like what you've done as well is nice. I would still add at the bottom like, this is what I've made, and maybe add like a slight outline to it, something like that. But add information to the image. Because for example, if I look at this, it could just be your unique way of presenting something, right? Because I don't know what you're trying to present to me, right? I am an artist, so I know what you're doing here. You're trying to present like, hey, this is what I've made, and then the rest of it is like mega scans, right? But add that in to the image. Make sure that anyone that looks at this image can get that that is what we're trying to do here, right? Make it super clear. Because again, we want to reduce friction, right? We want to reduce any questions that someone might have when we show them an individual piece of art, right? So for example, if the question here is like, what are you trying to show me? That is not a good question to introduce to people's heads, right? So yeah. Can we make it like mid poly and then split it to low poly and high poly? Can you make it mid poly and then split it to low poly and high poly? I wonder what the use of that would be. Because so here's the thing, right? Like with mid poly, you if we're talking about like if we're talking about mid poly, I want to be really clear here, right? Mid poly is a way to texture your assets without having to use baked data, right? That is what mid poly workflow does. So you'll see this on like Star Citizen, for example, right? All their ships use mid poly because all their surfaces use tileable textures and then they add layers on top of it, right? A good example for this is also Doom. Anything in Doom uses the mid poly workflow because they use a base mesh that has like bevels built in and all that kind of stuff, and they layer things on top of it like decals and like RGB masking and stuff. But there's almost no value, especially, okay, let's make it really clear, right? If you're trying to make a door like this, there is no value in a mid poly because we're not going to use that at the end. It is best to just make a base mesh that kind of has like a lot of these shapes and then just sculpt on top of it and then bring it back in, right? If you are doing, let's say a hard surface prop or something like that, what you can do is you can then only have a low poly and then you do a bevel shader, right? Like you do a bevel shader in Marmoset, or you have like the polish workflow in ZBrush, or you use like a bevel modifier in Blender. There's a couple of options there. And that means that we can kind of use our low poly to become the high poly, right? But we can't do that if the intent is then to take it into ZBrush to sculpt unique details, right? Does that make sense? I know I think where it gets really confusing is the naming of things. Because there's a lot of names thrown around, like, low poly, mid poly, high poly, like all those things, but they all have specific use cases in the workflow. Yeah. I hope that answers the question. Ramit. Natmin? Sorry for mispronouncing your YouTube name. Kind of understand now. Yeah, I know it's confusing, right? There's a lot of stuff happening. There's a lot of different workflows. There's a lot of combinations of workflows as well that happen. Let me show you a quick example. Like a stereotypical example would be Felix, Lion, Decker. I use this example a lot. He has this post right here. I'll share it with all of you. This is a good example of what you could call like mid poly, right? So you start with base meshes that have bevels and all that kind of stuff like embedded into it. And what we then do, we then add layers to it by, adding decals, adding like normal decals, adding surfacing decals, and then adding like, vertex painting to add like little bits of dirt and grime and all that kind of stuff, right? But you can clearly see the iteration that happens here. And the base of this would be mid poly. Same thing, same thing on Alien Isolation. I think that's where it really got like a lot of popularity, was because they were, I don't know if they were the first, but they were like definitely the ones that like popularized the whole workflow. So yeah, let's continue on. We got the Kingdom Below challenge. Lovely. We're not gonna dive into this too much. I'm more curious about like your personal work, and then we dive in here. So you're experimenting with little GIFs and little videos. I love what is going on here. You're already adding. See, this is good stuff, right? Like you're telling me exactly what is happening at the bottom of the frame. That is, I want you to be in that thinking all the time. Like if you show me a frame and it's not like anything, like it's not a beauty render, right? I want you to tell me what it is so that I can immediately know what I'm looking at. It's good stuff. Good stuff. And then, like the presentation and a different font and blah, 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 all that kind of stuff comes on top of it. But I'm already happy that you just have like a basic font. We're seeing transitions and you're telling me exactly what you've done. So that's good. I would say like all this stuff uses the same workflow. Have it in one image, right? Because if I've seen one of these images, I know exactly what is happening here. I know exactly what is happening here. So you're just doubling up a lot of the information. I think it could be more official to have like one frame that has like all of these pieces into it and then just do the same breakdown and it becomes one image instead of 3 images. The reason why I hammer on this so much is because time is precious. The more images you have, the longer it takes to go through an entire post, and the more people you lose like going through the post. Okay. It's a tree. It's a tree. My main question here is like, what's the purpose of showing this off, right? If you, this is almost like a perfect base template to then say like, hey, look, um, I take this guy, I turn it into like a wireframe. I have the original version here, so this is where the original version is, right? So we're doing um, mesh, we're doing wireframes, and then we have like all of our textures here, right? Dun, dun, dun. All my beautiful cubes. Just imagine that they're cubes, right? Or like squares. And then you can be like, okay, like this has this many triangles as well, right? This many triangles, this many polys, like whatever you want to do. And then all of these textures can be like, oh, this is all 2K textures, 2 times 2K textures, let's say. Right? Way more informative. Now I know exactly what I'm looking at. I know how you've made a tree. I know how much polygons it has. I know the textures. I know everything. One image. One image. Because right now, you're almost just throwing this at us, and it's just like, it's a tree, guys. You know what I mean? It sounds very, very intense, right? The way that I'm saying it. But that is what this image is saying. It's just like, oh, it's a tree. Cool. Let's have a look. Let's have a look at the tree again. So this is the build-up in speed tree. Yeah. This is more informative already. I like this. I don't mind this at all. I think if we're talking presentation, right? Do a little bit of a cutout, do a little bit of video editing, all that kind of stuff. But I'm already happy to see this here. More than happy to see that. Cool. Okay. So there's a lot of information still missing here, right? Game art breakdowns, please do them. They're super important. Keep that in mind. Let me go back to your main page. I think we went through all of it. Again, I'm trying to do my best to not like hammer on like one single point the entire time, right? So let's go into what stood out. Okay, so what stood out immediately? Remember in the beginning, we said what I liked was that you had consistent thumbnail design. which I quite like. Because what this is saying to me is that you are thinking about like how you present your portfolio as a whole. That is a skill that a lot of people haven't even thought about because they're so busy presenting their work individually, right? I think what is interesting is that now we need to flip it on its head and you need to spend way more time presenting your art and the work and the game art compared to thinking about like the wider portfolio design, right? Because this design and the way that you're handling your thumbnails, right, and the consistency between them is giving me a lot of good vibes already, right? I'm really happy to see this. But then we go into like the individual posts, and like a lot of them lack like that finesse in presentation, you know? Like in here, in the older pieces, you could kind of see that, like, okay, I'm thinking about my presentation still. I still have the border, right? There's a consistency going on here. Nice. And then at a certain point, you just give up on that consistency entirely, right? So it is one of those things where if you have consistency in your portfolio, I want to see it through all the pages continuously, right? And because that is what is really going to make you stand out. You take this stuff seriously, like a professional would, right? That's what you're showcasing in your thumbnails. I want to see that continued in your actual work, right? So I love that you're doing the thumbnail design, but this needs to continue in the work as well. Then we dive into some. I mean, we're just honestly missing game art, right? No breakdowns, UVs, UVs, textures, poly count, etc. I'm not going to repeat myself too much here. You can honestly literally click on any video in the whole portfolio reviews like playlist, and I'm going to mention it. I can guarantee it. So please do that. Da-da-da-dum. And then, there's like some cool stuff going on here. Um, but yeah, it's almost. I'm trying to also take a step back and look at like how you're trying to position yourself in this industry, right? Right now, what you have is you have hard surface, you have assets, you have environments, you have Houdini stuff, and I get second year of students, I was also doing a lot of experimental stuff. I think my recommendation for you would be like, okay, if you say you're specialized in 3D environments, do more for like specifically 3D environments, right? And that also means that I want to see you take things to like a higher level as well, right? Instead of focusing on um what would I say? Maybe not instead of. I think that's reductive, right? So I want to see you more focus on the things that you love to do, right? There's some good glimpses in here where you showcase, sculpting, texturing, all that good stuff. Now I want to see you take it like further, right? Like for example, this door. How do you then take it further? What would be the next level that you can take it to, right? Look at something like Wayfinder, for example, and the way that they do their sculpt. Very expressive, very artistic, something to keep an eye on. Yeah, but the main crux of it is gonna be like I want to see the game art. I want to see breakdowns. Um, so that's where like your techniques are gonna suffer a lot already, honestly. Um, it is interesting, right? So your presentation is doing okay, but then the more we start diving into it, the more your presentation just suffers, right? Um, there are some glimpses of like you're thinking about like the kind of information that you're trying to tell people, which is good. But yeah, I don't know, man. Like there, it kind of is all over the place. That's what I'm feeling. But like something like this is really great, right? Like this presentation, it's going in really nice. Of course, the game art stuff. Well, we've talked about that a lot. But yeah, Yeah, let's have a look. So let's try to break this down, right? So presentation, um, you kind of go hand in hand, right? So let's see. How would I break this down? Because you scored a lot of points with like your portfolio presentation, but then the artwork presentation kind of suffers because of it, right? So we're kind of gonna end up with like, let's say a 4 at this point. Artistic ability, you know a lot of the techniques, right? And you showcase them visually, right? Like sort of to like a certain degree. But what I'm really missing is okay, how do we take that to like the next level, right? Like how do we take something that is like relatively simple compared to like what we're seeing here? How do we then take that to the next quality level, right? Again, sure, second year student, right? There's still a lot of runway and a lot of time for you to learn stuff. And I think you're already doing fantastic. But it's almost looking at something like this and then being like, okay, how can we push that? You know, push the shapes, push the texturing, push the blending between all the surfaces. Like, yeah. So yeah, there is some good stuff happening here, but then you know the shapes are kind of lacking. And it kind of feels just like I said before, right? Like low poly is restricting your final output. Let's see. I'm kind of rambling all over the place. So let me finish this off, and then we'll come back with some final thoughts, right? So let's see. Hideability right now is also going to suffer from the same thing. We're not really seeing game art, and I think you make a decent impression already, but then that's going to be dragged down, right? So I think we're looking at a 5 that gets dragged by like no context. You know, I don't. You're too much of a risk to hire at this point, right? Because I don't know if you even know how to bake. I don't know if you can use the techniques that you're showing off in like the correct way. You know, so it's all those things that you have to think about. And whenever you're creating an asset, you know, like just doing the visuals, that's not what we want to see, right? In here, it gets better for sure. And I love that you're thinking about this, but it needs to go like that additional step, right? And then artistic ability at the moment. I think you're doing decent, actually. I mean, decent sounds like such a rough statement, but I think you're doing good, right? You're doing good. You have a good skill in texturing. You have a good skill in presentation as well. There are some things that we talked about where it's like, you know, like push the shapes further a little bit. But I already like what I'm seeing. I think honestly, the biggest thing that I will say is add more geo. Adding more geo to this is going to make a huge difference because then you know like even these like flat little elements they can just be like actual geometry, you know, like cut them out, make the door individual planks and give it more geometry, right? I think that's going to be really really nice, especially because this would be something like God of War, right? Let's say, yeah, treat it like something like that, you know, give it a little bit of extra geometry. I think that could be cool. And then this one is interesting. This is more like a Houdini showcase, like turned into like VFX kind of workflows, right? Because you're doing compositing made in Nuke. I don't know. I don't know. This feels like a weird project where I'm not sure where you're trying to align yourself with. Let's see. Yeah, this feels like one of those weird projects where it's like, hey, I'm kind of using VFX stuff, and then I'm also doing environment art stuff, but it's like in this weird space in between the two. Dun, dun, dun. So yeah, cool. Let's round this off. So artistic ability, cool, 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 cool. What I would say is for sure more game art breakdowns. I mean, that was going to be no surprise to no one, but I want to see you break things down, right? Like show me the goodies, show me all the nerdy stuff behind the scenes, and then also, yeah, use more geometry. I think that's going to help you a lot. Don't be afraid to go for like more geometry and make things more unique. And yeah, push that angle of it. What I would say in your portfolio here, let's bring out the pen. I would say cut this one out just because no game art, right? If it's a quick thing for you to do, maybe we can keep it if it's well done. But I maybe have my sneaky suspicion that that is the reason why it's not presented that way. This one is a question mark because I was wondering, like, where does it come from? Is that following tutorial? If so, state that. That's fine. This one was interesting. I think this is actually a good usage of like scope, right? So we can kind of keep that. Again, more game art breakdowns. Like, I want to see that. So let's see. These guys can all stay. I think that's good. The team challenge can also stay because that is the team challenge is not necessarily because you're showing individual like artistic quality. It's more about like you also showcasing that you can work within the team, source control, all those things, right? And this one is kind of weird. This one, I don't know if we want to keep that necessarily because it feels like thoroughly in between spaces, right? And then maybe the same thing here. We didn't actually look at it like too much. Yeah. I mean, it gets to a point where you're going to definitely get to a point where the study you're going to be making in your third year is probably going to mean that we are going to cut this one out, maybe cut this one out, maybe cut this one out, you know? And we're going to focus on high quality overall. So that's what I want people to do. At a certain point, your old work is just going to be that, right? Like you've learned so much, your presentation has evolved, like the way that you work has evolved. So at a certain point, we have to cut things out. I think those individual things in the beginning are probably going to be on the chopping block, depending on what you create, like going forward in your third year, right? So, yeah, hopefully that was helpful, Hugo. Thank you for sharing your work. I appreciate it. Yeah, man. I mean, you're on a good track, right? I know that we focus all about feedback and like trying to help you get to the next level and all that kind of stuff. You're on a good track. Um, but man, it just pains me to see that like people don't put in game art. Like that is so important because you can make pretty pictures, but if you don't tell us like how they're made, then it's almost like from a recruiter perspective, like I don't care. Like it's too risky to hire you, right? Like you're leaving too much on the table, too many question marks. So yeah. Anyway, thank you for sharing your work. All right. Before I do that, let me actually share the link for people as well. In a chat, feel free to share your thoughts for the portfolio as well. Um, see, yeah, feel free to share your thoughts on the portfolio. What did you think about it too? Maybe some extra feedback as well. All right. Excuse me for a second. I'm gonna grab a drink real quick. Mm, mm, mm. I'm back. Yeah. Thank you for the recommendations. Let's have a look. What is the chat saying? I think you could most likely put benefit from improving the texture work, like more color variation, play with the normals more. I feel like they're a bit flat and focus more on game ready stuff, as Tim said. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's also a good point. Like the texture work is already like in a good state, but definitely can be improved, right? It also depends heavily on which project you look at, right? Because for example, the Viking house, like that can definitely be improved with like a lot of texture improvements, right? Where I think, for example, the door and what was it called? Like the Atari? I think we're actually already in a pretty decent state. But I think it's also interesting, like with a prop, right? With an individual prop, you have to be focused so much more on the detail, right? It is about literally like little fingerprints, little scratch marks, little things like that. You cannot do that in like a short amount of time. And that's where you can really feel like someone that has like a generic approach to texturing, right? Like it's more about speed and kind of getting it to look good, to like someone who has like a detailed look at like, okay, how do people interact with this? Where are going to be the wear and tear edges, you know? Yeah, that stuff is super important. I'll give you an example, right? So if we go back to the portfolio for just a second, if you look at something something like this is the bottom of an Atari, right? What happens to the bottom of every prop? Going to be a lot of scratches because that's where a lot of the friction is going to be, right? So these like plastic things, yeah, are not going to be good. There's one thing that I actually didn't talk about, and I kind of wanted to discuss this before, but this section here, 20 hours. I want to I want to make sure, I want to say this out loud. No one cares about like how much time you spent. No one cares. It just needs to look good. Because if I can point out like a bunch of flaws and you made it in 20 hours, that is it's still not going to get you hired, right? I would rather see something where I'm like, "Oh my god, this is awesome." I don't care on how much time you spend into it, right? For sure, it is a production skill, right? To kind of do something quick. But I want to know that you can get there because optimizing the time to get there is easier than getting there in the first place, if that makes sense, right? It's the same thing. That's why you see ArtStation is filled like a bunch of props that are like way too high in like texel density and texture quality and geometric quality. But if you think about it, it is easier. Oh, sorry. Excuse me. Jeez. It is easier to tell someone to optimize their textures and their geometry than it is to tell someone to make a prop look good, right? So yeah, that's something to take into account. Mimachu is saying a lovely portfolio, but show more optimization techniques, more of the process behind the scenes. Yep, 100% agree. Maybe create a scene that has more props. I want to see more detail. I know he can do it. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's the thing. Hugo's also already showing like a good quality skill set, right? Like now, like a good all-rounded skill set. Now it's about like, okay, how do we take it to the next level? Where's the quality going to come from, right? And I think your suggestion of saying like, hey, look, we take all that we've learned now and we take it into like one scene, right? Small in scope, and then really pump out the quality, right? Like try to push that to the next level. Yeah, that's going to be important. And when I say small in scope, there's actually some beautiful examples, and Hugo is actually has a great example of this too. The Viking house, right, where he was just like, "Hey, I'm going to focus on the house itself, and the rest of it is going to be mega scans." That is totally fine. But now you set yourself a quality bar. That house needs to be as good as mega scans, right? So that's like the downside of doing this technique, but it is a great way of reducing your time that you're going to be spending on a single project. I think that's beautifully done. Keep doing that because that's where the value is going to be. Because then you don't spend a lot of time on like, oh, now I need to make foliage, and now I need to make terrain textures, and now I need to build a sky, and like now I need to do all this stuff that is irrelevant to the house, So I think that's a good workflow to use. Yikili is coming in and asking, oh yeah, this is, by the way, like if you want to ask any questions yourself as well, like feel free to throw them in the chat. That is highly appreciated. In percentage, how important is it to put the process of the work in portfolio? Dude, it's 100% required. It's 100% required. Because here's the thing, right? Like, if you can make a pretty picture. Okay, let me simple it down because I was thinking about technical terms again. If you make a pretty picture. Okay, let us give like a very topical example, right? This is going to be a stupid example, but follow with me, right? Let's say you make a pretty picture, but it's made with AI, right? That is almost what we're saying here. That if you don't show the progress of your work or how you've built it, that is honestly the most important thing, right? Because there's beautiful pictures out there that are just like totally irrelevant to the industry. For example, there's people that make like really beautiful images with 10 times the amount of geometry that you would use in normal games, and with um I don't know, 100 times the texture resolution that you would use in a game, right? And that is VFX, right? They use different kind of budgets. So you kind of need to know the restrictions of the industry that you're going to work within, and you need to be able to show them off as well. Because otherwise, if we're going to hire you, you might be out on the streets again, like after a week, right? Because oh my god, like there's still so much more to learn. Um, but here's another thing. The second part of your question, and it's good questions, right? Because I also realize that this is very hard to understand if you, or like very hard to like find information on, or is not even on like a lot of people's minds for like good reason, until later down the line, right? Um, it is really difficult to find like good examples of like, okay, this is what a portfolio should look like, this is what game art should be, unless you go to portfolio reviews or you talk to industry professionals, right? They all say the same thing. You're going to hear this in a lot of different streams. Yeah. The second part is actually never thought that it would to put them on there, because I don't think HR even understands. Well, here's the thing though. So HR is not the sole person in charge of making a hiring decision, right? So HR, and you're probably talking about like recruiters specifically, they do the initial outreach. Their job is to talk to people, get to know them, get to know what they do, how they work as an artist, so that they can then relay their candidates to the people with the expertise, right? So yeah, like HR might not know how it all works in practice, right? But I can guarantee you that they know enough to understand that if you don't have game art on your portfolio, just skip them, right? Or like don't have breakdowns of your portfolio, just skip them. I can almost guarantee that. Because it is going to bounce in like round 2, right? So for example, if then a recruiter comes back to the team and says like, hey, look, here's like the candidates that we talked to, here's 20 of them, let's say. It's still going to run into the team, and the team is still going to decide like, oh yeah, like there's only like a handful of them that even know what game art is, right? And that's still going to happen regardless. Um yeah. Yeah, because that's usually how it works. Sorry, I was trying to think about like different types of studios and all that kind of stuff, but no. Like usually people with the skills are going to also be involved within deciding if you're going to be a part of their team or not, right? Stefan is saying, I would personally, if I was him, go back to the house and improve the textures, because that shows a lot of modularity and a good use of a game environment. Yeah, I mean, that's a good recommendation. I can agree to that. I think the counterpart is, and I'm thinking about myself, right? Myself in that position. I would never go back to projects. Once the project was done, it was done. But what you're saying is a good idea. If sometimes what happens is there are opportunities on the table where if you just add a little bit of time to a portfolio project, you can level it up to the next level, and it's going to look 1,000 times better. You know. It's very insightful. You really opened my eyes. I would like to share my improved portfolio if there's going to be more streams like this. Yeah, I'm here every week. We do this every week. Shatish is asking, should I maintain the same quality as hero props if I were to make props for my environments? Nope. Nope, 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 nope. No, it's an interesting transition. So let's say you are on your journey of becoming an environment artist, right? Or a game artist, let's say. Let's make it a bit more broad. Usually what happens is you'll start out with a single prop, right? Which means that everything that you do is going to be unique to that single prop that you're building. When you then transition into, like, let's say a diorama, now you need to start opening your eyes to different ways of building things in your environment. The first thing you're probably going to be encountering is tileable textures, right? Let's say you're making walls, you're not gonna texture them uniquely. You're gonna use tileable textures instead, right? We can apply some of the same sort of mentality to individual props as well. That's where something like a trim sheet comes in handy, or maybe even tileable textures with RGB masks. Like those other techniques, they become really valuable because from a production perspective, right? We want to spend the most of the time on the things that are interesting or important to the narrative, which is the storytelling of a scene, or well, the storytelling of a game, or they're going to be important for the player, right? Which means that you can make a unique texture for, let's say, a statue in the room, but the room itself is supposed to be modular so that we can reuse like the assets and the textures in different rooms so that we can build like a bigger city, right? If we're making an open world game. So in terms of where you want to put your focus is always on like, okay, what's going to be my focal point, right? The most important thing in your scene. Use the workflow that is easiest for that type of asset to get to a high quality end result, right? I'm trying to be like all encompassing, but that means that if you do a small prop, you're gonna do unique assets, right? When you're doing bigger statues or something like that, you're not gonna have enough textile density, so you might have to use other ways of building that prop as well. But that's beside the point. Yeah, so make a hero prop in a unique fashion, and then use other techniques for the rest of your scene. Because otherwise, man, you're gonna be spending a whole lot of time on a whole bunch of assets that are not even gonna be that important to the scene, you know? Just trying to save you time. Yeah. But good questions though. It's a good question. Yeah. It's it's interesting. You'll see this in all games. Um Red Key. I was thinking about that exact same scene. And he knows about this, by the way. The thing that I'm gonna say next, he knows about this, right? But let me read your comment first. So I don't know if I can share some links, but when I was searching for a job, lead environment artist at Ubisoft told me to reach the 1900s dentist office scene from Adam Denker for a junior, if it can help someone. Yeah, we'll show it off, right? Because we talked about this in person a lot of times already. He knows this. He's fully aware of this, right? So he knows what's happening. But let me share the scene. And I'll start with his comments, right? So this is the scene we're talking about, right? So this is the scene. I'll share the link as well if you want to check it out for yourself. So this is the quality bar that was told to you and other people that would be like reachable for like a junior, right? And I think this is a fantastic scene, right? I think Adam did a fantastic job on this. But he already mentioned that if we were to do it again, it would be more trim sheets and more tidables and all that kind of stuff. Some of these like more generic assets in the background, right? Like the wardrobes and the cupboards and all that kind of stuff can easily be a trim sheet for the most part. And that will save you a bunch of time because now you just create one texture and you can almost create like all the bookcases and all that kind of stuff that you want, right? So that's an idea to give you an idea of what could be improved about a scene like this. But I do agree in terms of quality of materials, quality of assets, presentation quality, everything has been top notch here. So yeah, good example to use. Yeah. I'll give you a little secret. He was also cursing at himself for making everything unique, by the way. Just letting you know. But that is a great example. Thank you for sharing that. And again, it is still accurate to what you said, right? Like if you want to get into the games industry, this is a good benchmark to have for yourself as visual quality. Still relevant. 100%. Thank you for bringing that up, Redkey. Conceptual Vision is saying, I was wondering if I should add my portfolio to the queue. However, I don't really have much game art and probably in it and probably should wait until I've redone it. It's mostly just random stuff there now. Yeah, honestly, if you want to make the most of it, just do your improvements, make game art, and then let me know. Because one thing, let me see. Okay, this is gonna be my little pet peeve, right? I'm gonna show a little bit of my background, somewhat frustration, I guess you could call it. It would really frustrate me a lot if there are people in here in the chat now that are here almost every week, and then I look at their portfolio and they made the exact same mistakes. That would frustrate me, like 100%. So yeah, add game art, learn from these sessions, apply some of the things that we said, right? And then post it. And then we can talk about it because also at that point I can then focus on the things that are more relevant to you, right? Because there's a part of me that kind of also dislikes having to repeat myself over and over about like make breakdowns, show game art, blah 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 blah. It makes for really boring streams. I'm conscious of that too, so I'm trying to kind of skip through it. But it's also it doesn't allow me to focus on the things that I want to focus on, right? Like how can I push people to the next level? Because we're still focusing on like ground, like fundamental stuff. Sorry, little rant there, couldn't help. But yeah, if you're in the chat, feel free to ask any more questions. We are in the meantime going to dive into the next portfolio. And the next portfolio is from Brice SABINE-MANIER, also from France. A 3D environment artist at Kayal Entertainment. Let's see. Yeah, I'll wait. Probably need to delete and restart, but the oldest piece is 10 years now, so it's a bit of a time capsule. Time capsule. Yeah. Unpublish it. Don't remove it from your portfolio. I still have all my old work like unpublished and I can go back to it, right? So it is a nice time capsule, but that time capsule is for you, right? It's not for anyone else. Because that's also a big thing, right? Like your portfolio is a showcase of the work that you can do at the best of your abilities, right? Yeah. I personally don't buy into like, oh my god, you should show growth and you should show your progression. As a senior, totally fine. Because at that point you're in the industry, you have a lot of titles in your name, that's totally fine. As a junior, no. Because you're just giving people excuses to not hire you. Even if the work is old, right? Because what happens then is there's always a question in the back of people's heads where if they look at your portfolio and you decided to maintain your old work, the question in my head immediately is like, why? Is that because you still think it's relevant to your portfolio today? And that is always the questioning, right? Like the underlying questioning that I would have. Okay, let's move over. So Brice wants to be an environment artist oriented lighting art and level art. Interesting. Okay, we'll dive into that a little bit later. But let's have a look here. Polyvalent 3D artist with a strong focus on level art and lighting in Unreal Engine. I create immersive and narrative elements, and I enjoy adding visual effects to add atmosphere. Curious, independent, and attentive to detail. I'm driven by ambitious video game projects. Cool. I think that's nice. I think that's nice. The only thing that I could have against it is like polyvalent. Sounds like very, very posh, very fancy. But that's honestly the other thing. I think the rest of it is like it's like quite a nice introduction. I think that's beautifully done. Let's have a look at the LinkedIn first. Oh, I forgot to mention for the previous person, by the way. I want to see a CV. Give me a CV. We kind of forgot to mention that completely, and that's pretty important. Let's have a look, and I think the same might apply here as well. You've got like a bunch of featured stuff in here. Let me see. Yeah, okay. So these are like all the ArtStation posts. That's pretty good. Yeah, give me a downloadable CV as well. It might seem pretty old school, but I've heard from like multiple people that they love downloading CVs or like pages or something like that, so that they can browse on it when they're like going to and from work. And if you can be in that pool, it's better to be in that pool than to not be in that pool. So yeah, let's see. Gaman Games internship, cool. Jin Monk Studio freelance, doing contract work. Nice. Okay, so you're getting some work. Love to hear that. Cool to see, man. Cool to see. Okay, let's have a look here. Anything else on the about page? Masterclass by Karim. Nice. So you did that like in the beginning of the year. That's cool. I'm going to look at likes. Okay, cool. So interesting. So my antennas are already up high because you call yourself a level artist and a lighting artist. I am curious, especially with the level artist side. I am curious if that means that you only build with pre-existing assets or if you also build stuff yourself, right? So that's what I'm already thinking about without even looking at the work yet. Let's go and have a look at the work then. A trumpet. What? Musical props? It's just random. What am I looking at here? Like, I thought we were looking at a trumpet, and then we're going to like musical platforms and pillars and arcs. I'm confused by this. And apply all the missing game art stuff here too, right? Like we're not really seeing any game art. But I don't know what the purpose of this was. If you make pillars and musical platforms, doesn't that mean that you can put them together and make like a diorama with like this as a focal point? Because my instant reaction is that this feels like a bunch of stuff you made for a project that you gave up on. That's what it feels like, right? And that's not a good feeling to have on your portfolio. So not a great first impression, you know? It's like the individual assets, they don't look bad. I quite like the look of them. Yeah, I want to see them combined in like a scene or something, you know? Hmm. And again, this is also coming from that initial comment, you call yourself a level artist. The job of a level artist is to take pre-existing assets and make levels with them, you know? It's kind of weird that we're not doing that here. Anyway, let's continue on. For this personal project, I focused on level art, using eye-catching techniques to guide the player's attention to the well. I use megascans for foliage and the props. I've applied 3-point lighting for volumetric fog, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so this is all just megascan assets that you combine together and then you did lighting, right? Right. Okay. I'm not a lighting artist, right? So don't take my word on this. I would say that this needs to be way better balanced, right? We have a lot of really intense shadows. There's a lot of noise going on in the set dressing. I can barely make out what we're even looking at here. So I think there's a lot of stuff to improve. I think the main thing that I want to point you at is clearly thinking about rest versus detail, right? So whenever we add a lot of clutter to the scene, detail by itself is asking for our attention, right? So that means that at a certain point, we need to then decide, like, okay, I have a lot of detail in my scene already. how do I then add areas of rest into it, right? Because if everything is noisy, then everything is going to ask for attention, which means that nothing is asking for our attention, right? Because it becomes overwhelming and I click away. I don't even want to look at it again. And that is also a part of your job as a level artist, by the way. Making pleasing compositions that can guide the player to the right areas in the scene, right? So very important here. Let me have a look at this. Hmm. And then the art station cover. This I don't see the value of this. Like we can just remove that because that's what we're seeing here anyway, right? So remove the cover. I would also say, and here's where it's going to be slightly different, right? If you're doing a lighting art portfolio, we need to show the equivalent of a game art portfolio in terms of breakdowns, right? What lights do you use? How did you manage the performance of those lights, right? Because that's a big thing when it comes to lighting art. How did you manage the performance? What is the overlap? How did you decide to light up like different areas? You know, that's going to be really important. If you're just showcasing this is for people that know this is going to be funny, but this is probably going to be too niche. This is giving me like speed level design tutorials on YouTube, where it's like it has nothing to do with level design, and it is just like level art, really. But then they call it like speed level design. There's a bunch of those things that are on YouTube, and it comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what the purpose is of what we're doing, right? So if this is like a lighting project, that is totally fine, but then showcase like how you've approached the lighting and the different breakdowns and how you've done the optimization of it, all that kind of stuff, right? Um, cool. I worked on level art and lighting for the cold zones in Bloodhound. I modeled most of the medieval props. Okay, modeling yourself. Love to hear that. Creating environmental effects like smoke, fire, and dust, and use tools for procedural details while handling optimization, dynamic lighting with lumen and nanite. Cool. That's awesome. This is a trailer, so that's not relevant to what we're looking at today. Integrated lumen and nanite into the workflow of dynamic lighting. Okay. Right. Okay. Game art is missing again, right? Breakdowns. Show me how you've done stuff. Now you're just showing like, hey, this is what I did. I want you to show me how you've done it, right? Really important. Continue on to the next thing. There's also a bloodhound. Is this like let me see. Bloodhound. Oh, I think I'm curious. Is that a professional studio that's making it, or was that like a student project, or no idea? Doesn't really say anything in here, right? Do we have a link that we can have a look at? No, not really. Moonwalker. Yes, okay, so this is a student project then. Okay. Cool. That gives me a better indication of the expectations, right? Like up the rooms. What is what are you trying to show here? So level art and lighting for the organic zones. Okay. I created many props. Okay. Okay, so we're getting to the point where we can see that there's also a misunderstanding between like level art and environment art, right? Level art usually gets referred to because you are just doing the set dressing, right? So that is like you take pre-existing things and then you make it yourself. I think it could be way more valuable for you to call it environment art. It's more encapsulating, and that seems to be more the skill set that you're trying to show off, right? Because you create the assets yourself and all that kind of stuff. Plus, also, this is the thing where I was curious for what we are going to see. I know that there are level artist positions that are opened in some studios, right? For example, I think Ubisoft has like a lot of level artist positions regularly open. The thing with that is, even as a level artist and your daily responsibilities will be set dressing for the most time, you need to know how to build architectural kits, trim sheets, tilables, props, all that kind of stuff. So just doing set dressing wasn't going to work. And I was curious if we're going to see that, right? But it's good to see that you build your own assets as well. I do love that. Let's have a look. Let's continue on. Lighting and level art study. Let me see. But this is, yeah, this is using pre-existing assets then, I'm assuming. Let me see. Oh, no. Okay. Yeah, okay. So you made the assets yourself as well, I assume. And then, okay, so the vegetation was not created by you. Ta-ta. This is already hinting at a problem, by the way, right? If I cannot know immediately what you've made yourself and what you got from, like, let's say, Megascans or other third-party sites, that's already an issue. I want to see you showcase this to me, right? So I actually have a page on that here, I think. Oh no, it's not available yet, but just to give you some examples, right? Like this could be a good way of saying, like, hey, look, this is what was used in the scene. This is how I'm using it. I think I even have, yeah, something like this. Okay, these are all the assets that I've made. I'm gonna combine them onto like one single screenshot. This is great, right? This is a good showcase of what you've done yourself. Um, let's see, same thing for these kind of breakdowns. It's a good showcase of like, okay, this is all the stuff you built. Great, right? And then you can kind of showcase like, oh, the trees are not from us. That's fine. We just focused on like the main kit, right? Just to give you like a couple of visual examples to kind of use. Let me see. What were we looking at here? Just multiple different like variations. Yeah, so different lighting variations. Right. Again, so I am not a lighting artist, right? One thing that immediately comes to me is, as a lighting artist especially, we we can be in charge, well, not we, like you are in charge of letting me know where to go next, right? Think about it from a player's perspective. If everything kind of has the same value in the scene, so let's say for example here, it's really hard to determine where we want to go, right? Because nothing is really calling out to me. And that is where your job as a lighting artist comes in, to just say like, hey, look, let me open Photoshop here, like photo. Let's have a quick look at how we can achieve some of that, right? So if we copy. So in here, we're just going to do a couple of quick edits. We're going to see how they turn out. Do rasterize. Don't want to do that. I want to capture the highlights. And I think what also would be nice, and especially because you got like this orange tone coming in, right? Highlighting certain areas where you can just be like, hey, look, I want that orange tone to kind of like showcase like, hey, that's where we're supposed to go, right? It doesn't matter which area, but at least now what we're doing is we're trying to make certain elements stand out a little bit more compared to the rest of it, right? And then we can do some cool things where, let's say, we start picking certain areas and we guide them through, but there is a hierarchy to things, right? So let me give like a quick example here. if we turn this to black and white, this is always a good thing to try and do. You can kind of see if most of your values are very similar to each other, that means that it's very muddy, right? It doesn't give us clear directionality of where to go. If we then try to do the same thing with, let's say, the other image that we just did the edits on, right? And hopefully we can kind of see where that goes. Now, this is giving us an indication of like, okay, like things in the foreground start popping out a little bit more, right? So now we're seeing like, okay, we're seeing elements like jump out of the frame more. Again, I want to keep this pretty short, but as a lighting artist, you are responsible for not only making things optimized, but also conveying like where we go, right? On top of the mood as well, right? So the first job is like to create like a cohesive mood, and then also to help guide the player on where to go, you know, and create that vision. Because even here, right, like a good example here is like all the lights in the background all have similar values, which means that they're all asking for equal amounts of attention. There is no hierarchy telling me like, hey, we need to go there first, then we go there second, and then we go there third, or something like that, right? Because that's the thing, like lighting is supposed to be ingrained within the gameplay. It's supposed to be literally guiding you through certain sections, right? Not all the time, but it's a good way to show it off. And especially if we look at a frame like this, and I have no clue where we're supposed to be watching. Yeah, that's a big issue for the lighting artist. I know that I'm pretty harsh with this, but hopefully that kind of gets like the point across. Um, yeah, and even here, right? So you started adding like local key lights, for example, and I'm gonna shut up about lighting in just a bit, but you talk about like local key lights, for example, here. So with those, you're basically saying like, hey, look, the foreground here is important, and this is important, right? That's the next step. But then I feel like this is the most interesting architectural element where we can kind of see us go into it, right? And that is like in the dark. I don't know. Something weird about that. That it's almost like the marriage between your lighting, your ideas of lighting, and the way that you build the level are completely disconnected from each other. You know, normally they should be like working hand in hand, where you build a place, you think like, okay, this is going to be the most important place here, and then you accentuate that with the lighting, right? That's how they can work together. That's how it works. All right, enough yapping. Let's have a look at some of the other stuff. Again, covers. I don't care about that. No one cares that you made like additional covers for your art station. I just want to see the cover that you've used, if that is the best one, because now you're basically just giving me an excuse to scrutinize your covers. That's what is happening here, right? If your cover that you chose is not the best one out of that selection, then you're giving me options to scrutinize your selection process. Interesting. Okay, let's do a quick recap, right? We went through that like pretty quickly because also there wasn't the main thing here is that I think there's confusion at play at who you want to be, or who or slash what you want to be, right? And I think that's making it very confusing. And I can see that through the work because you show off lighting, but then you don't do breakdowns for lighting, which means that like, okay, like you're not really keeping in mind like optimization and performance and stuff. And the lighting that you do add, it doesn't feel to be aligned with the places where you would normally want people to go to, right? So it's kind of like, disconnect happening there. With level art, or let's say environment art, right? Like let's make it a bit bigger. Or let's not do that. Let's keep it to level art. Let's keep it simple. With level art, there's too much chaos going on. nothing was really well composed. We didn't have like a clear focal point to be focusing on, or it wasn't guiding me to a clear focal point, right, in the scene. And you can kind of see that those two elements already go together, right? That's what we discussed before. But what is also missing is from the projects that you've done assets for, those assets don't show like any breakdowns. There's no zoomed in or detailed shots for the individual assets that we can kind of have a look at and kind of see what the individual quality is. Which makes it really hard for me to then reach out to you and be like, okay, like I know exactly what you can do. I know exactly where we can put you in the company, and that's where you'll belong, right? It's almost like I'm trying to think about the correct words to say in this. Okay, the way that I think about this is that it almost feels, and I apologize for being too harsh. It almost feels like you're not taking it seriously yet, right? It sounds more like you're just having fun with the stuff that you have fun with, and then you just throw it on your portfolio, but you don't know what that means to then be aligned with the industry, right? And I know that sounds like very hard, but that's sort of the feeling that I get, which is really interesting. Because again, like if we look at your portfolio, right, you have a current position at a studio, which is interesting. Which makes me think that you know, or you must know how to be somewhat aligned with it, right? It's interesting. Yeah. Hmm. So, okay, what can we do about this, right? What can we do about it? I would say pick your focus, right? If you want to do if you want to do lighting, that's totally fine. Pick any sort of free project and do lighting passes on that, right? And showcase me that you can also think about like performance and optimization and shadow casting and all those things and deep dive into lighting art, right? Opposite direction. If you want to showcase level art, right, or environment art, then it's more about like picking smaller environments and showcasing me that you can do the work when it comes to reaching a high quality bar, showcasing that you know how to guide a player through the scene, have a good composition, have a nice focal point, and show all the techniques that are relevant to making that project, right? Um, yeah, so there's like a choice to make here, I would say. Let's see. So let me add here. So there's confusion at play as to who or what you want to be. So pick one of them, like one of the choices that you have or made for yourself, and show the attention to detail that I'm looking for, right? Because that's going to help. That will help recruiters and studios decide where to put you, right? I just realized that I'm putting it in the wrong tab, so we're going to copy it over. So copy that over. Cool. Um, missing breakdowns, both for lighting, both for lighting and environment are techniques alike, right? What you can do with these like bloodhound environments, showcase what you've built yourself, right? Like showcase how you've built the VFX, like showcase how you went about like setting a level, like what you've like there's a lot of I feel like there's also a lot of opportunities on the table here to showcase what you've done in more detail than what you've done so far, right? Because you use chaos destruction, which could be really cool, but we're just seeing like what you've done, right? Not how you've done it. Focus on the how. That's going to be important. Yeah. Again, breakdowns are going to be really important. And be specific what you put um, on your pages, right? So cover art posts are not relevant because they're all already the thumbnail. You know, I'm not going to add that in, but you already have the thumbnail there anyway. Yeah, so let's have a look. So hireability, from my opinion, pretty low at this point because looking at the wider market, there are people that know what they want to do in both of those categories, right? Like in lighting and in environment slash level art. And I think standing out in that crowd, you're just not showing enough in terms of breakdowns and detail and thinking about the production process, right? Think about the production process more. So yeah, chances are going to be relatively low. Presentation is actually interesting, like because I was setting the bar high because you call yourself a lighting artist, right? Or you carry the title of lighting artist, which means that if you are conscious about like making lighting, then I already think about like, okay, this is going to be well presented, it's going to be beautifully lit, and all that kind of stuff. But I think there's still a lot to learn there, right? We talked about it enough already. And I think the presentation just is very lackluster in terms of just like what is on there, right? I think this project is going in the correct direction, right? You're showcasing volumetric high fog, local spotlights, like all those things. This is going in the right direction. It is still missing the optimization, right? The performance of it all and how you managed your lighting complexity and all that kind of stuff, right? That's very important too. But this project is already way better than all the stuff before it, right? So I'm super happy to see that you're already thinking about this. And I know that I've been pretty harsh when it comes to these reviews. Um, I'm I need to try do a better job at that. But yeah, I think this is going in the right direction. Keep adding breakdowns like this, right? Like lighting only, detail lighting, show me what the optimization, and think about the presentation. I would also say, in terms of this project specifically, you're showcasing 4 different variations. I only want to see one. I want to see one that is awesome. I want to see one that is lit up in a way that like a AAA game would be lit up, right? That is going to be more impactful than showing 4 variations that some of them could easily be cut and it would do better for your portfolio, right? That's a hard thing to say. I know that you probably put like a decent amount of time into this, but that is what your portfolio comes down to, though, right? It is being able to curate for yourself what you think the best vision is of your work. Yeah. Cool. So presentation, pretty low down. Artistic ability. This is interesting. I think there's a lot to learn here still, so that's also going to be pretty low at this point. I mean, so thinking about it, there's a lot of interesting things that you're doing, right? Because you know how to create tileable textures. Well, I'm assuming that you know how to create tileable textures because you created all this by yourself, right? Where was the breakdown again? Probably all the way at the bottom, maybe. Let's find it. There we go. This guy over here. So I'm assuming that you're creating all the rocks yourself, you're doing the textures yourself, like all that kind of stuff. I think that is awesome, right? And even texturing the architecture. So there are skills that you clearly have and that you're showing, but you're not showing them off, you know? So there's opportunities that you're just leaving on the table by not showing them off. Maybe, and this is where assumptions have to come in again, right? I have to assume that is because that individually they do not hold up, but it is still better to showcase that and give an accurate representation than to leave us in the dark and not show anything, right? But yeah, artistic ability is going to be a bit higher because you do know how to create titleables, like you do know, you do a decent job of like composing it. It can definitely be like way improved, especially with lighting and all that stuff going to come in. But yeah, you have like layering, you have separation between like the depth, like there's some good stuff happening there. So I don't want to be too harsh here. Go to 5, and then techniques. Man, this is difficult, right? What do we base that on? What do we base that on? Because there's nothing there. That's really difficult. Maybe for lighting, you're going into that process, right? Which is good. I can kind of see the thinking behind it, but you're not showing off like the placement of the lights, how many lights, the optimization, like yeah. So it's really difficult. I would say that this drags your score down by a lot, unfortunately. Yeah. So that's where we're gonna end it for you, Brice. Again, I know that I'm being pretty harsh, but I do it with good reason. I do it with the reason that I want you to succeed. I want you to get good at something. I want you to show me high quality stuff, and I want you to break into this industry. Um, whether that is lighting art or environment art, we need to pump that up to like the next level. Because again, there are opportunities here. Like some of this stuff looks like pretty cool, but missing breakdowns, right? Like how did you approach it, and why didn't you make like a full environment out of it? Like there's some like interesting questions out of it. Yeah. I just subscribed to the tier 1 Beyond Extended subscription. Yay! I've been looking and watching these live streams for months. Hey, thank you so much, Mimachu. I hope you enjoy the community. There's a bunch of resources for you to check out as well. There's like a 250-page PDF that you can download as well. So make sure to grab that from your dashboard on the website. Yeah, but happy to have you with us. That's awesome. Okay, let me make sure that this is submitted. Cool. I'll open it up to the floor. If anyone has like any sort of comments about Brice's portfolio. And also, was I too harsh? Man, I keep doubting myself when it comes to this. I'll be honest about it. Because there is an element where, sure, I tend to focus a lot on just the presentation, right? And how to get yourself into the industry. But I also realize that like there's a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of chaos going on, like sometimes I feel pretty bad for just being so direct and blunt, I guess. And I know that I almost ask this like every time now. I think maybe that's also because if we're being open and honest, um, I think that's also because a lot of it is just very similar, right? And I think, well, not actually this one. I think Bright had a very unique position, that we could talk about, and it was actually interesting to see from a positioning perspective how, um, yeah, how to position ourselves better. But yeah, a lot of it is very similar. And I guess we're spiraling around it, but that's also the reason why when I was doing portfolio reviews before, I think that's also why after a certain point I kind of stopped doing them. So are we getting back to that place? Who knows? The guy saying, I mean, it's not like getting into the games industry is any kind to us. Yeah, but that doesn't. I mean, I know what you're saying, and it is tough. But that also doesn't. That shouldn't give me an excuse to be an asshole about it. It's not because the industry is fucked that I kind of need to give you a good lesson into what it means to become a game artist. Sometimes I feel like I'm pretty bold and upfront. I need to, I don't know, find ways to be more elegant about it. Because here's the thing though, like I do mean what I say. And I do think that a lot of the things that I say, I already try to soften them up anyway. And even then, they come out like pretty harsh sometimes. Um, but yeah, it is tough. It is tough. Hmm. You need to be that, I think. Well, I think I need to find. I probably need to find like better ways to be more constructive about it, right? Because I think that once I latch onto something, and I tend to see that in myself, like if I tend to latch onto something, I keep hammering on it for like a while, right? Obviously, most of that is going to be breakdowns, you know? Yeah, valid as well, but certain things, they will keep a good look at when getting your work in front of recruiters. Yeah, yeah, that's the hope, right? Hopefully, it is constructive enough so that you can figure out the next steps, even though the immediate feedback is oftentimes like pretty harsh. At least in my head, I didn't feel like it's that bad if I compared it to other times I heard feedback. That's good. That's good. Maybe also a little bit sad because maybe the other people were like even harsher, and that also makes me sad. Never been too harsh. I think sometimes when people are missing important basic breakdowns, it's okay to be direct. Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah. I think that's also why I think it's important that I'm setting up like these two pages that I'm currently building, right? Like these two lessons that I'm going to make available to everyone because I want people to go through them first and then submit their portfolio. And then we have a lot more interesting and varied stuff to talk about, right? Like how do you then like put like certain details into your presentation, or how do you then push yourself to like, I don't know, pivot into like a different thing, or something like that, right? But then we don't have to keep talking about like breakdowns or something like that. Sometimes you need to be honest, but at least keeping to a respectable point is good, because coming from my internship, yeah, that was bad. Ooh, yeah. I think what I try to do as best as I can, even though sometimes I realize that I fumble, and that's normal. It's live and all that kind of stuff afterwards. But most of the time, what I focus on is I want to be open and honest, but then hopefully I give enough context so that you can turn that into something constructive. That would be my hope. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that it's going okay, and we'll keep improving on it, and I'll keep tweaking it. But yeah. And that's another two people in the bag. Oh my god, how many people have we done up at this point? We have done a lot of people already. Dang. It's cool to look at the leaderboard though, like the amount of people that we talked to, and this is only accounting for like the new sessions, not the previous ones. But yeah. All right. Anyway, I'm gonna head on out. Oh, there's a question. Right on time, Red Key. Okay. Let me see. So Tika is saying, I don't know, but it does feel like that from the times I got feedback from you. It feels like honest and like, oh yeah, good point. I should go back and fix that. There's not a lot that I can disagree on. That's good. I mean, I think especially when it comes to art feedback, right? I think that's where it's a little bit more open for discussion because it's more subjective as well, right? But when it comes to, making a portfolio or doing something technical, that is like, hey, look, there's like a right way of doing it. Well, portfolio debatable. But like with technical perspectives, right? Like there's like a right way and a wrong way of doing it. So that's usually easier. But yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Ricky is asking, I've got a question. Is it interesting to show unique props for an environment artist or only full environments? No, show a unique prop as well. I think the best thing to do is showing a unique prop or maybe two unique props or whatever, and then slowly build your way up into making a diorama or let's say a fuller environment, right? That transition usually works really well because you have to look at it from like a skill perspective, right? So if I'm hiring you as an environment artist, and let's say I put you in like a production setting, it is a huge benefit if I also know that you can make a prop as well, right? For the cases that I need to have you there, like I can just be like, hey, Red Key, go and make like a prop here because we need it for the production and we don't have like outsourcing budget or whatever, right? So it's almost like adding another thing to your portfolio. Plus, most of the time you're going to be working your way through making a prop anyway to become an environment artist, right? So if that prop is good and it holds up, add it on your portfolio. All right, with that said, I'm heading out. I'm going to do some more work. I appreciate you all for being here. I know that these sessions can be long and somewhat repetitive, but I appreciate you here nonetheless. And thank you so much for all the good questions. I appreciate that a lot as well. You know the drill. Share this with your mom. Share this with your dog. Go check out the Beyond Extent website. Become a member if you haven't already. And then we'll see you in the next session next Wednesday. Bye-bye.